You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders.
And under our beds.
And in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
That's pretty dark. Gotta put my big old podcasting pants on.
Me too.
Which is funny. It's ironic because I'm not wearing any pants.
Yeah, where are you gonna find your podcasting pants?
I'm just gonna
should be around there somewhere.
Wear them on my head or something like that. Oh man, gotta step up. Step up to the plate.
Yep.
Baseball references.
References.
And sip on my gin and feel alive.
That's what we like to do, is to feel alive. I'm not really good at it.
Oh, damn.
But yeah.
Yeah, Kalyn's not feeling well today.
Nah, man. When am I ever, though?
I mean, sometimes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, sometimes I feel better than others. Sometimes. This is one of the others.
This is one of the others, yeah. So I'm going to try to have fun for everybody.
Y'all know I have my health issues, and they just don't seem to be stopping. So we are plowing forward anyway.
Like we were just saying, this is why we have this podcast, because
life sucks.
Life sucks. Life is hard. And I think Gary really understands that, because that's kind of the whole point of this episode, as we'll find out.
Gary knows best.
My name's Christian.
Yours is Christian. Mine is Kalyn.
And this is That's Pretty Dark. Today is a special episode, though.
It sure is.
This is Season 1, Episode 13 of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Pinball Wizard. And that means this is the end of Season 1.
It's pretty crazy. It's also our 40th episode, I think.
It is our 40th. Oh, this is
our 40th
40.
episode, and this is 40. And this is the last Are You Afraid of the Dark in Season 1.
The conclusion to our first ever season binge.
Crazy.
Pretty exciting.
It is.
It's sad, though. I'm kind of sad.
I mean, it feels like yesterday that we started, to me, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I might be the only one that feels that way. But
no, it feels that way to me, too. But let's jump right in, shall we?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Let's do it.
Episode 13.
This episode aired on November 14th, 1992. And that is a unanimous date between IMDb and the wiki page.
Finally, for once they agree.
The IMDb summary is Ross, a mischievous kid, goes to the mall where his old habits sometimes get the best of him.
Oh.
It sounds like he's a shoplifter.
Sounds like me.
Where he just has like a great day shopping. He just goes around.
I don't think I have very good mall habits. I mean, I don't shoplift, but like, I don't like the mall. I'm not good at the mall.
Yeah, I don't think I have any mall habits.
Maybe
I used to when I was younger.
We all did back in the day.
So for my summary, I thought I would show up the IMDb summary by doing almost the exact same summary, but in an accurate way that actually gives some information.
That's usually what we try to go for. Ross,
a latchkey kid, plays a game of pinball that turns out to be real.
I mean, you're not wrong, I guess.
I mean, you know.
It's a sentence, but it's an accurate sentence.
But just as simple, just as sweet.
Do you know the whole time? So the kid's name, the main kid in this episode, his name is Ross. And I just kept thinking of Ross Hull, who plays Gary.
Exactly, yes. That was one.
Ross is Gary's real name.
Yeah. This episode was written by Louise Lamar and Tom Rack. This is what Louise is most known for. And Tom Rack has actually had a career as an actor instead of a writer.
Oh.
So he played the Watcher in The Tale of Watcher's Woods.
Very popular episode.
And he also played 2 characters in this episode.
Wow.
Do you know which ones?
I think I do, but I'll let you tell me.
Okay. He played the sheriff and the security guard.
One and the same.
One of the same. They're parallel characters. We'll get into that some more. But I thought was also worth mentioning, he provided his voice for Country Mouse and City Mouse Adventures.
Aww.
And he was once a contestant on Jeopardy!
No way.
In 1993.
I like when they have stuff like that listed.
He walked away with something like 18 grand.
Dang.
Something crazy like that. And my screenwriting professor in college was also on Jeopardy!
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think you've told me that.
It was cool.
I want to go on Jeopardy! I would do so badly, though. I feel like I know stuff. It's like the classic thing. I know stuff when I'm sitting at my house, but if you put me on a stage, I would be totally just blank.
No, I don't know anything. I might do okay if it was like Harry Potter themed Jeopardy! Maybe, but that's about it. This episode was directed by our man, DJ McHale.
That's our man.
Apparently, this was a very difficult episode to film. and it took longer than planned, which might explain a lot of the details and rules of the world sort of being tossed around all harem-scarum, not really making a whole bunch of sense because it just kind of had to get done one way or the other.
I get it. I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Production schedules, man.
Production had to ask the crew to work an extra day to finish the episode. And that's not really a big deal. That's pretty standard. Happens all the time. I've been part of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the IMDb trivia claims that the crew broke union rules because DJ was like begging them to finish the episode and come in for this extra day. But it doesn't really happen like that.
No.
It's very formal. Production goes around and they ask all of the department heads, will you and your team work Saturday? Mm-hmm. And either you say, yeah, we will, or no, we can't. And when you do, you make overtime the whole day.
Yeah.
So you have that choice between getting your Saturday or making twice as much money. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I just thought it was weird that they were like, it was so dramatic how they described it.
Right. I mean, I'm sure it's not how every episode went. So for it to be out of the norm, maybe it was worth noting.
Maybe,
that kind of thing.
Perhaps. And like we said, not only is this the final episode in season 1, but this is also Eric's last episode.
Oh, yeah. So sad. I thought about that when I was watching it. And I was like, oh, bye, Eric.
Bye-bye.
I won't see you anymore.
And according to IMDb trivia again, DJ didn't really think the audiences would care very much about the Midnight Society characters. So he didn't feel the need to explain his absence, to like write him out of the story. But after the show aired, he like instantly knew it was a mistake because people loved the Midnight Society. So he decided to, going forward, always address the comings and goings of other characters.
Which I think is important.
It is important. It's just so sad.
Yeah.
Eric
no goodbye. No acknowledgement.
So here's my disclaimer for this episode.
Okay.
There are a lot of nuanced things. It's very complex and crazy and chaotic. This is another episode like Jake and the Leprechaun, where it's a story inside of a story inside of a story.
Storyception.
Except the deepest level here isn't a stage play, but the intricate elements of the story that makes up a pinball game. And the specifics of the gameplay are intentionally disorienting so that younger audiences would feel the same confusion and dread that Ross feels. Like the objects of the game are totally unattainable. The goals are unachievable. Which I get that feeling now, but I kind of see where all the chaos lives. Versus just the, whoa, this is a crazy game he's playing.
I know.
So to avoid going beat for beat, we're going to break down the themes and the characters and the elements of this episode and how they all relate to each other.
Nice.
But in really no particular order.
So go watch the episode if you haven't, or watch it after this.
Yeah, you'll get a pretty good feel
on Paramount
for what
Plus.
happens. But it would have been a whole lot of like, and then this happens.
Then they walked here, and then they ran away.
Yeah. And then when that happens, this happens, but they couldn't do that thing because this happens. This episode gave me serious nightmares.
Wow.
As a kid. This is the first one I can remember watching again now going, holy shit, I dreamt about this.
Oh my God.
But Ross finding himself alone in the dark shopping mall with all kinds of frightening characters lurking in the shadows, popping out. This one left a big impression on me. I'm going to get into the specific moments that I had dreams about as a kid.
Okay.
But I had them multiple times and often and deeply.
Empty shopping mall.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dang.
And watching this again, even now, I felt those same familiar, tiny little quivers of sickening fear and dread that I used to feel as a kid.
That's why we're here.
100%.
They kind of go into the virtues and the pitfalls of video games. And this is at such an early point in the conversation. It's fascinating to me because things have changed so much now. And I mean, over the years, I'm sure we'll talk about it. I don't mean to step on your toes. I'm sure you've got stuff to say. But over the years, I feel like, you know, video games were kind of vilified for a long time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And even today, a lot of people say that they're responsible for violence, like inciting violence or all these things and violent games. And this is, you know, it's melting your kid's brain and all this stuff, yada, yada. But while I guess gratuitous violence for like a 6-year-old kid, I personally probably wouldn't let my 6-year-old, if I had a 6-year-old, play, you know, something super violent. But at the same time, so I work in and around engineers. And recently, they've been talking about the interns, like at an intern level, that are coming in to help us at high school and college levels.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how much faster they can orient themselves in a 3D environment. Like they already have all this experience in terms of navigating 3D on a computer or in like a those types of software that
Right.
are needed for engineering.
Right.
And they are saying, let your kids play video games. Let your kids play all the video games.
I agree.
Because
Yeah.
it's teaching them those skills that people coming into engineering for the last, several decades have not had. And even we didn't to the same extent that kids now have that
Right.
experience. And when I heard an engineer say that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
That's wild.
They
Yeah.
already know how to operate in that space in ways that I don't even. I complain all the time. Like, if I'm going to play a video game, I need the camera to move for me. I don't like video games where I have to move the camera and the character. That already starts to break my brain.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, that's been around
but-
for a long time.
Yeah.
But it just was interesting to me, like, the benefits that we're seeing. And I'm we can't say one way or the other. Video games are great for you, but I can say anecdotally that I've heard that, and it's pretty cool.
I think they are.
I think they are for a lot of reasons. I think problem solving and
It's really good for eye-hand coordination, too.
yeah, that too, for sure.
So I call the beginning of this episode the Game Boy intro.
Love it.
Everybody's super enthusiastic about
Oh.
this Game Boy.
I miss my Game Boy.
Ooh, I have mine.
Oh, you have it? You literally have it. I don't have mine. I have no idea where mine went. Hey, that's like the original. Is that even a Game Boy Color?
I'm back. What?
Is that even a Game Boy Color?
No, this is the original 8-bit
Yeah.
Game Boy.
Yeah, that's the original.
Oops.
See, I
My
had
Game
a
Boy
Game Boy
Color was
Color.
like purple.
Mine was too. I had a purple Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
Love it.
So to give us an idea of where the world was when this episode aired, Nintendo released the 8-bit Game Boy in 1989, which often came bundled with the game Tetris.
Yes.
Which I thought was a lot of fun.
I got Tetris with my Game
Which
Boy. in
I
fact.
had Tetris too, and I was always like, why did we buy this game? I like it, but I can't imagine. I just didn't know where it came from.
That was the
I was
first
too
game I
young.
ever played on my little purple Game Boy Color.
This handheld device pioneered handheld gameplay, which has resulted in many upgrades and improvements over the years, going from the 8-bit to the 16-bit, and so on and so forth. And this may very well be why, like, the first cell phones had games on them, because they just
Handheld
capitalized
games
on,
kind of revolutionized everything.
yeah,
You weren't
Yeah.
tied to your TV.
right, yeah. You didn't have to go to an
anymore. You
arcade.
got to be mobile. I saw a really cool retro ad for a Game Boy the other day on one of the Instagram accounts we follow that had like all of the gear. It was
Oh,
like
yeah,
the
all the
case,
stuff.
the case that had the extra battery for charging and all the places to put the game cartridges. But it was like clunky and humongous.
Oh, the peak of
hard-sided
existence.
case. And this kid was like, it looks like he's wearing this giant, it's not even a bag. It's a hard-sided case.
Yeah.
And he's got his Game Boy and he's got his light on his head or whatever he's got. And the ad is like, don't be tied down anymore. And I'm like, nothing looks more tied down than that.
That's so
to
funny.
my 2022
Oh
self.
my God, yes.
It's pretty funny.
Man, those were the days.
I do miss it.
The Game Boy, the 8-bit Game Boy, was created at the very early stages of this console war between Nintendo and Sega.
Yes.
That war didn't really get started until 1991, when Sega released Sonic the Hedgehog
Yep.
for the Sega Genesis, and Nintendo released the 16-bit Super Nintendo.
I didn't ever have Sega. I played Sega at other people's houses, but I had the Nintendo because my dad had it to play Duck Hunt and
Oh man, I
all
love
those
Duck
games.
Hunt. My first console
Super Mario.
was the 64.
Man, that was the one that I would say was my first one that like belonged to me.
Right,
Because the Super
right.
Nintendo definitely was probably more my dad's than mine.
Yeah. But I want to save the bulk of the history of video games for when we inevitably do like a Mortal Kombat episode or something
yeah,
to
we'll
that
do an
effect.
episode on a video game, and I'm sure
Eventually.
that'll make sense.
And the store where Ross goes to play pinball is not an arcade. So
no,
I'm going to save all that stuff for later.
good point.
But I thought it was worth mentioning here because this episode would have come out really at the height of this console war when like Nintendo and Sega were going at it and everybody kind of had one to the other or both. And video game culture was exploding. Of course, not to mention how popular arcades had been since the early 70s.
Yeah, it was bringing the arcade to your house, essentially.
But the important plot details we get in this opening narration with the Midnight Society. Well, David's trying to get the key.
I've almost got the key.
Whatever the key is. They're talking about getting the key. And then Eric walks up and presses the reset button.
Hey, what's this button do? It resets the game.
But the original Game Boy doesn't have a reset button.
Yeah, that's true.
Excellent. You got the key yet?
No, I may never get it.
They just needed this concept to exist for Gary to sell the haunting undertone of this episode. And we have Kristen, who is not impressed and she has to say the line, "It's not even like it matters if you win or lose."
Kristen's right. When you play a game like this, it really doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Because all you have to do is press reset. And you get a new game. And another chance. But what if it really did count? Imagine if you had to beat the game. Or the game is going to beat you. And there were no resets, no replays, and no second chances.
Trust me, I've put myself in that position.
Right.
We've all seen Spy Kids Game Over, have we not?
I don't think I have, actually.
I mean, the whole idea of, you have this many lives in a game. I don't know. It kind of freaks me out because you have the idea that you lose all these lives, then you're done. And applying that to real life as a human is very, very terrifying.
Right.
Like, it's super scary.
So this is a classic trope. The game is real. This is another fictional scenario that's just an analogy for how scary or difficult being alive actually is. If you screw up here, you got to make up for it.
Right.
There's no starting this level over again. There's no second chances. If you die in the game of life, you die for real. It often feels like the world or the universe is playing against us.
Yes.
And like subconsciously, we feel like if we can just do things the right way, it'll work out. Like we will succeed at something. And if we work hard, we will, as the kids say, level up. So like game symbolism has permeated our culture.
Definitely.
Our philosophy, our lexicon.
I don't even know. It has affected our psyche just as much as film and television have.
Yeah.
If not more so, because with a video game, you're an active participant. It's a less passive activity. So you're absorbing all of that information. You're absorbing all the tasks and all the wins and the losses. You're kind of taking them for yourself in a way that we don't always do with TV or film.
Right.
So it's more ingrained into your personality because this is something that you've done, you've achieved, or you haven't, I guess. Have you ever in life, especially when I was younger, I know I did this, have you had the urge to like save the game?
Yeah.
Like when something good happened to you, I would even say it to my parents. I'd be like, I wish I could save the game right now. Like I would have a birthday party. I vividly remember like after a birthday party or something, I got like a gift that I really liked or I was excited about.
Yeah.
And I had that urge where I was like, I need to save the game. I don't want to lose this. And I do the same thing in dreams too, where if I'm dreaming and something good happens, I have that urge to like save this, keep this,
Right.
Somehow download it somewhere where I'm not going to lose all the progress that I made.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of my ADHD too, but I have a very hard time, like if I have to repeat myself or if I like die at the very end of something, like a long drawn out storyline in a game and I die, I have absolutely no motivation to go back to the beginning because I'd have to repeat myself and do it all over again.
Oh yeah.
And my attention span does not like that. I don't like to have to repeat things. So that I feel like also kind of, I don't know that it comes from video games, but video games enhance that.
Yeah. Well, see, I was thinking specifically about regret and wishing you could do something over again.
If I could just start over, if I could just, I've lived my life.
If I could go back, I would do things so differently.
Absolutely. If I could just start this level over.
Yeah. See, I don't know if it comes from that kind of thing.
It very well could. And it entered our psyche at such a young age too.
Yeah.
And kids today as well. I feel like it would have affected us more than the generations previous, with people that were like my parents, that my dad was getting into video games when he was in his like late 20s, early 30s.
Right.
He had already fully developed and we had not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's part of kids' development now. I mean, just like all technology is, but.
Yeah. The effect of video games on the collective millennial psyche is pretty wild.
And I'll give another example of fears adults have had surrounding addictions to pinball specifically, as I get into that history. But it's like adults or parents have always had this deep, deep concern about what video game or just games in general, but specifically now video games, the effect they were having on the development of kids' brains. I mean, that was a big conversation when we were kids.
Yep.
And it didn't start with the home console type games. I think it just magnified because
with the arcade,
you didn't have to go to the arcade.
You don't have to leave your bedroom. Like you're at home and you might stay there forever kind of thing.
Right. It was already concerning but kids still had to physically go to arcades.
And there was a social element to it, which is interesting because it's kind of like video games started as this very social thing. Then there was a period where that kind of dropped off. Not that it wasn't social at all, but there was a period where the games themselves weren't really like multiplayer necessarily, and certainly not online for a long time.
Right.
And then it kind of came back, towards the time we were late high school, I guess, early college, where online gaming was a thing, for the first time.
Yeah.
And that made it social again.
Right.
But I do feel like there was almost this like dark age where it, unless you were couch co-op, as they say, if you were in the room playing with someone, you were really kind of isolated playing a game.
Yeah. I mean, so my personal example that I always think about is when I was learning to drive. My dad was teaching me. He was worried that I wouldn't anticipate or appreciate consequences of negligent driving. So when I was learning and he was teaching me, he used what I call the Mario Kart metaphor. He said, if you run off the road, you won't be picked up and put back on the road to continue driving. If you hit a wall going 60 miles an hour, there's a good chance you're going to die or seriously injure yourself.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to keep that in mind. You have to pay attention. It's not a video game.
So he felt like you playing video games like Mario Kart would impede your ability to react and appreciate the actual reality in front of you.
It's funny because I wasn't like an 8-year-old kid playing video games. I was 16.
Right.
Like I was like, seriously?
But for him,
I kind of get
you had been playing games since you were a kid and you didn't know how that would affect you.
Exactly. I think that's just part of the concern that, kids just don't appreciate consequences because they can just start over in video games. It's like, well, yes and no. And I understand.
See, for me, I have always appreciated consequences. I just wished I could apply that to life.
No, I wish I could. Yeah. God, the number of times. If I could just go back to my save point, my God. Anyway, we don't want to get in too deep too early. We have an episode to talk about.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So, submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, Gary calls this story the tale of the Pinball Wizard. Once we begin the story, we don't return to the Midnight Society until the end. This is the first time that happens.
Yeah.
Not the last.
I noticed that too.
The first time.
Do you think that was because they wanted this to be to feel more immersive? Like you were stuck?
I think so.
Like Ross is stuck.
I think so. Probably.
Yeah.
Ross Campbell was the kind of kid who was on his own a lot, so he knew how to take care of himself. If there was something he wanted, he'd do everything he could to get it.
Basically, he was a latchkey kid. He sneaks around the mall looking for loose change. He's checking the payphone slots. He even steals a quarter from the fountain pool. I thought of the Goonies because I was like, no, hey, that's somebody's wish. You can't take that. Ross is played by Joe Posca. This is his only credit with a name. And IMDb says that he quit acting and eventually became a science teacher in Ontario.
Wow.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So Ross Hall quits and becomes a meteorologist.
Meteorologist, yeah.
And then Joe Posca, who plays Ross in The Tale Told by Gary, becomes a science teacher.
Hey.
It's pretty neat.
There's something to that.
Probably.
Science fiction.
And this mall is the Rockland Center Mall in Montreal.
I would like to go there.
We'll have to go there.
That'd be great.
Once Ross takes a quarter out of the fountain, this super gross bag lady comes out of nowhere and tries to take it from him. And their tug of war draws the attention of the security guard, who is wearing an eye patch. So Ross lets the lady have the quarter and runs off and hides behind a glass case, displaying Super Soaker water guns, or one Super Soaker.
Floating in there in the glass case.
Yeah. This made me think about that meme that was talking about all the depressing commercials for like depression and anxiety and all these adult issues. And it was like, show me the latest in Super Soaker technology.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think the meme wanted like a setting on
choose kids
like
commercials.
Netflix or whatever has ads. Hulu. Show us only kids commercials.
Eluding this security guard, Ross pays a visit to Mr. Olson, who owns a store in the mall. Mr. Olson is played by A.J. Henderson, and we'll remember him as the creepy carnival barker in the Tale of the Dark Music.
That's right.
I did not recognize him. I was like,
I didn't recognize him either, but I recognized his name.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've talked about you.
He's this Mr. Fix-It type of guy who basically can repair anything that you need repairing. In his store, we see sculptures, clocks, toys, chairs, a typewriter, and this crazy old radio or like TV that has wires just everywhere. I've never seen so many wires. And he's got a couple old pinball machines, a mannequin that looks like a medieval executioner holding a medieval mace.
It does, standing in the window.
And Mr. Olson is repairing a music box when Ross walks in. So I recognize this as kind of a classic trope. It's not very common, but I've seen it a few times. This young rascal has some form of friendship or association with an eccentric adult, usually some type of like shop owner or toy maker, like a tinker builder type. But either way, the adult almost always has a remarkable secret. One of my favorite renditions of this is in the film Hugo, between the character Hugo and the character George Méliès. And your favorite, and probably the most famous, is Back to the Future.
Sure is.
Between Marty and Doc. But Ross is there for two reasons. To play pinball and to pester Mr. Olson for a job so he can get paid to play pinball.
And pretty much in that order, it seems
Pretty
like.
much. Yeah.
Come on, Mr. Olson, I'd work cheap. Besides, you could use a talented guy like me around here.
To do what? Play pinball all day?
But
It's the only talent
Mr.
show
Olson
me.
refuses because he's tired of hiring irresponsible kids. And I don't blame him.
Sure.
But Ross swears he can be trusted, saying Mr. Olson won't have to fire him like he did Steven. I wonder what actually happened to Steven.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Me too. I think we figure it out by the end of the episode.
I think we have a pretty good idea. But even though Mr. Olson is adamantly against hiring another teenager, he agrees to let Ross watch the store while he goes to lunch. So he's giving Ross a chance to prove himself as a trustworthy kid. But here's the catch. Ross isn't allowed to touch anything, especially not the new pinball game in the back. And naturally, Mr. Olson isn't gone 10 seconds before Ross
Of course.
sneaks to the back and starts playing.
That is
this new
so
pinball game.
the opposite of my personality. I cannot
Same.
even
Same.
I can't relate to the urge, honestly.
I'd have been like, pinball game? What pinball game? Games?
yeah, but and not
Games
only
aren't real.
not only pinball game, but like you tell me what not to do, and then like I know a lot of people that probably that would be their first instinct. Go do that thing. Not me. It couldn't never me.
No.
Not a thing in my world.
I'm too worried about getting in trouble.
Same. I respect authority, when they deserve it.
I have a problem with authority, but I have a desire to prove myself despite
Sure,
that.
that too. Yeah.
Because I know that I can get ahead. If I want this job, I'm going to do what it takes to get that job.
Yep. I'm not going to blow my opportunities. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going to ruin it. I don't have to like Mr. Olson,
Nope.
but I like myself.
You need him to like you.
I need him to like me, exactly. So we never really see the gameplay itself, but the game art on the back of the pinball machine tells us that this theme is within the realm of medieval fantasy. The main design is a clownish-looking face, which might represent a court jester, but the other characters we see there, the princess, the witch, the executioner, and the sheriff, who's wearing an eye patch. And so I looked into a medieval sheriff. The original word for sheriff was a reeve. It was kind of the same thing as a modern day sheriff, like somebody who presides over a county. Another word for a county is a shire. So eventually, somebody who was in this position was known as the shire reeve. Over time, shire reeve is boiled down to sheriff.
Gotta love some etymology.
I love it. It's so cool.
Shire Reeve.
Who's that? Oh, that's just the shire reeve.
I can hear it. I can absolutely tell. Like that's one that it didn't take much. And that's crazy that so many of our English vocabulary, so much of our English vocabulary comes from Old English.
But while he's playing this game, he's interrupted by Sophie. Sophie's played by Polly Shannon, and she's had a pretty successful career as a television actor. In the early 90s, like mid to early 90s, she had a recurring role on season 2 of Catwalk, which was a show about the lives of a group of young adults who form a pop group and try to make it big.
Man, I loved all that stuff.
Did you watch that?
I didn't watch it, but I would have been into it. I loved everything with that type of plot line.
I could see that.
Didn't she also appear, Polly Shannon, in Erie, Indiana?
Did she?
I think so.
Well, then she did. There it is.
I looked it up and saw it. Only like one episode, but I was like, hey.
Yeah.
And Outer Limits as well.
Outer Limits, I saw that too. Yeah, she had a few big things. And it looks like she started with this episode and then just kept acting. She's still acting.
Yeah, I think this was
She has some
first
things
credit.
coming out. Her mother was a screenwriter for children's television. Her name is Mary McKay Smith. And she wrote a bunch of stuff. But the most significant to me was 65 episodes of The Adventures of Teddy Ruxpin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, though. And
I
that
had a
might be
Teddy
how she got
Ruxpin.
into the business.
I think so, because her dad wasn't, but
Her mom was a writer.
he was somebody important, and they gave her the ultimatum, like, you have until 25 to be a successful actor. So she just did it.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Pretty cool.
Do you know how old she was when she was on this episode?
Like 19 or 20.
Yeah, I was going to say, she seems older.
She was older.
Yeah.
Sophie's there to pick up her music box, which is in the shape of a throne. Very important. Despite putting the music box away and going to lunch, Mr. Olson didn't finish repairing it. So she just says, I'll come back later. And the pinball game turns back on by itself.
Right.
So Ross returns to the game. He's dramatically playing and losing and delivering to us some serious exposition so that we'll know all the most important game elements. From this, we learn there are 3 levels, and he has to get to the top level. There are zombies.
There are zombies.
And he mentioned something about not having enough water or being out of water or something, so we know water is important. Water in a pinball game, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Some of this is a bit far-fetched.
It's a stretch. We'll say it's a stretch.
We'll call it a stretch. But it is magic, so I don't know. There's a witch, and she's something of a surprise attack character. There's a crown and a throne, and the goal is to crown the princess on the throne. But the princess is missing.
Sure.
And if she's captured by the other characters, you lose the game. But Ross plays this game for a while, so while he's preoccupied, let's talk about the history of pinball.
Let's.
You want to hear about it?
Please share with me.
I am just tickled by the history of pinball in all the right ways.
That does not surprise me.
It is so fun. It's way more interesting than the history of video games and arcades combined.
Wow.
So here we go. A brief history of pinball by
Christian Baxter Mott.
No, by gamesver.com.
Oh, okay.
That's where I got my information from.
Gotcha.
Pinball arose in America during the Great Depression when Americans were looking for cheap entertainment. This is based off of the French game Bagatelle. This game consists of moving balls past pins. So pinball wasn't exactly a stretch. Well, originally, pinball machines were built without the flipper mechanisms on the sides.
Which is the only thing I can think of
Isn't
when
that
I
chaotic?
think of pinball.
It was only the spring-loaded, like, pinball shooter.
Then how did you affect the game?
You didn't.
Oh, it was luck.
This made it a game of chance.
Ah,
Therefore, pinball was a form of gambling.
I see.
Legally, it was a form of gambling. Slot machines were suspicious and were subjected to many police raids. So the mob started using pinball machines to run their gambling schemes. And they weren't officially breaking any gambling laws until payout slots were connected to the sides of them. And people could now make money off of the game. People began to consider pinball machines as slot machines in disguise.
Wow.
Which I think is just so funny how nefarious it got. When pinball is just one of the most like silly, goofy games to ever
Innocent
exist.
in my mind.
It's so innocent. But by the 1940s, pinball was outlawed.
As are most good things.
Yeah, those good things, right?
Nah, man. Kidding.
The flippers were invented in 1947.
Wow.
But it remained illegal in many places until the 1970s.
That's wild.
But pinball is still illegal in certain cities,
Like where?
certain places. It didn't say where.
Oh my God.
But there are certain places in the US where it's still illegal.
But even though it's not just chance.
They don't enforce it. They just never, it's a whole procedure to get laws overturned.
It's just in there.
It's just a whole complicated process. It costs money. Nobody wants to do it, right? So it's like, well, you can play it. We're not going to do anything. It's like walking down the street in downtown with an ice cream cone in your back pocket.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
That's illegal. It's wild.
As much as you might want to, listener. Don't put your ice cream in your back pocket.
Imagine the mess it would make just down the back of your pants. Don't get chocolate. That would look wrong.
No, sure would.
Make sure it's like strawberry or something.
No, that might look wrong too.
You're right. Mint chocolate chip? I don't know.
Oh my
Pistachio. God. Pistachio.
Sure.
Green's always good. Green means go. All right. So there was always a lot of social concern surrounding pinball. A lot of people saw pinball as a gateway game to more serious gambling.
Sounds familiar.
They thought it was training children to become gamblers.
Wow.
And the joke's on them because children have always been gamblers. They've always been shysters. Can't trust them. There were such things like pinball joints. You go to the pinball joint and play pinball.
Gotcha.
So people claimed that the owners of pinball joints were stealing lunch money from children
Wow.
because kids would skip school to go play pinball.
Wow.
So cities had to ban kids from playing pinball during school hours. So you couldn't let kids into your establishment
That's serious.
before like 3 o'clock.
Did you ever like to play pinball? Because
I have played
the
pinball.
times in my life, I've definitely played pinball, but I don't think I've played it and like wanted to play it. It was I have 10 minutes to kill.
Yeah.
I'll play it while I wait for this table or
You know
whatever.
where I played pinball mostly? CC's Pizza.
Oh, CC's Pizza. That makes sense.
That's pretty much it because they had the small arcade in the back
Yeah.
and a buffet of every kind of pizza you can imagine. And that's about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There definitely were pinball machines there. I can remember that.
But yeah, I never loved it. It was never really it for me.
Mm-mm.
Now,
Because probably it was too simple. Because
Well,
we
yeah.
had
video
by the
games.
time, we were playing games, we had video games that were a lot more, Super Mario Brothers.
totally.
Who's going to choose pinball over Super Mario Brothers?
Not me.
Not me.
Because kids were like skipping school and all this stuff and it was becoming a problem, adults were concerned that kids were getting addicted to pinball. And many people feared that it would entice children to steal money just so they could get their pinball fix. And once pinball was outlawed, it became associated with rebel culture. So now it wasn't just fun to play pinball, it was super cool to play pinball.
It's super bad.
So bad with your little cigarette tucked behind your ear and your hair all
Leather
greased
jacket.
back.
And pinball.
Man, can you imagine just throwing back some sarsaparilla, playing some pinball,
At the soda fountain.
toothpick in your mouth?
Mm,
My God.
I'm into it.
Super cool.
Zuko baby.
Then, during World War II, it was considered unpatriotic, just like it was unpatriotic of kids to cause mischief during the same time. Around Halloween, this is the same era of Black Halloween and all that fun stuff. Only with pinball machines, it had much more to do with the copper and aluminum and the nickel being thought of as wastes of material that should have been used for the war.
Gotta ration. Gotta,
ration.
yep, cut back.
So the mayor of New York City at that time, Fiorello LaGuardia,
LaGuardia, like the airport.
destroyed all the pinball machines in the city,
Dang.
pulling all their useful metals and materials and dumping the carcasses into the Long Island Sound.
That's extreme.
Well, he'd also done the same thing to slot machines and dumped all those in the Hudson.
It feels unhelpful.
Feels
Bad.
like pollution.
Yeah.
And anyway, he'd previously demonized pinball machines, so he turned this into a photo op. Like he was using it to bolster his own reputation. He was tough on crime.
Right.
And pinball
Crime
machines,
like pinball.
super illegal, super bad.
It's so wild.
Isn't that
It's so
wild?
crazy how things change. Just the cycles of
I know.
culture.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I don't feel well.
No.
That's super general to say, but it's just insane to me.
Listen. When I was working on a movie and I was hanging out with my friend Bailey and we were talking about something to do with hurricanes and hot weather and all this stuff. And I was trying to explain it, but I'm not a scientist.
No kidding.
I was like, it has to do with like weather patterns and like systems and shit.
Ah. Profound, yes.
He just like sat there and was like, systems and shit. Yeah.
The technical term.
You explained it.
Yep.
Perfect.
That's how I feel. I'm in a systems and shit sort of a headspace.
Me too. You know what? Oh, we're going to get there. God.
Thanks for sticking with us, listener.
I'm going to get into some crazy philosophy. I'm going to talk all about simulacra and simulation, and no one's going to know what the hell's going on. So get
I
ready.
already don't.
Get ready.
Good job. Wow.
Right now, pinball.
Pinball.
So pinball games were further advanced in the 1950s, adding different types of art packages and increasing the sophistication of the playfield mechanisms. I'm going to try not to just stutter through this whole thing. These art packages, before like movies and franchises, it was very generic themes like space.
Which is what I remember.
Robots.
Like the one on the computer. Like the very early like Windows 98 pinball.
Oh, yeah?
It was like outer space.
Yeah, it's pretty much like that.
Combining video games and pinball.
My favorite was like high speed.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So the theme is like fast. I mean, it's like the whole thing. Oh, I love like 1950s
So good.
Marketing and stuff. So great.
Quick.
Agile.
Synonyms.
Oh my God. Ooh, what if synonyms was just a theme, an art theme for a pinball game?
Synonyms.
Synonymous.
You're moving through a grammar textbook.
Synonymous simulation.
Wow.
Now, with these new updated versions, quoting from this website, this article, They were electromechanical and ran on They were electromechanical and ran on a precarious balance of moving parts. And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, if you know, but I think these moving parts were coils, relays, and stepper units.
Sounds right to me.
It sounds right.
What do I know?
Let's call it right.
Okay.
Then, by the 1970s, microprocessors further advanced pinball once again.
Sure. Because now there's a lot more chance. It's like an early algorithm. It's going to spit something different out at you each time.
Kind of, yeah. Because, well, this brought it further into the realm of electronic gaming. And this is where I literally wrote circuit boards and shit. What else am I going to say? I have no idea. I'm not a scientist.
Or an electrical engineer.
I am not. Why is the outlet in my bathroom wall clicking?
Hey, yeah, if you know, let us know. It seems bad.
Oh, God.
We've both had issues with our houses. I've had issues with my body. Like
my cat was sneezing for 3 days.
My cat was sick too.
Oh my God.
I've had a sick cat as well. What is going on?
We're in a simulation. None of this is real.
It is all a simulation.
All right, so now that pinball was digitized, there were digital displays, music, sound effects, and this was around the same time that arcades were popping up. So video games, like you were just saying, were already more popular than pinball. But here, this is when the art packages became more specific, not just these generic themes. It was branding for certain runs of games, and one of the most popular versions was the Addams Family. Did you ever see that one?
No.
I don't know if I ever played that one.
I don't think so. That's so cool, though.
It's fun. But the popularity, like I've said, has ebbed and flowed over the decades. But the nostalgia of pinball has created an upswing in popularity recently, especially with all kinds of barcades and quote-unquote museum arcades opening up around the country. And it's becoming so popular again now that newer pinball companies are starting to recreate some of the older classic themes and titles.
That's cool.
That's fun.
I mean, we love nostalgia. We know we do. Listener, you're out there, hopefully, because you feel the same way.
Yeah. If I went to an arcade now and they didn't have some pinball, I'd be bummed.
Yeah, same.
I'd want to play.
Same.
You got to have two things at an arcade. Pinball.
Skee-ball?
And skee-ball.
Yeah, that's right.
I love both.
Me too. I love skee-ball, particularly.
It's so fun.
I would skee-ball over pinball if I had a quarter,
If I had to pick a ball with one quarter,
it'd be ski.
it'd be ski.
Same.
I'm glad we agree.
On something, for once.
Why we're friends. We agree on a lot. What are you talking about?
We do. But usually on these random little things, it's like our opinions could not be more opposite.
That's true. Sometimes we are different. But bringing this into the 90s, with the rise of video game popularity and the dying out of arcades around this time, it makes sense that a handy fella like Mr. Olson would have a hobby of finding defunct old pinball machines and restoring them to their former glory in his shop. I think he makes sense.
I like it. I think it's cool.
I think it checks out.
Well, I liked it at first, we'll say.
Well,
we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Keep getting ahead of ourselves.
Every time. So here Ross is, playing one of these old pinball games while he's supposed to be watching Mr. Olson's store. And the next thing Ross knows, so much time has passed that it's now nighttime. The mall is totally empty. Mr. Olson never came back.
Rather liminal, if you ask me.
See, I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to. Because I think people are tired of hearing me say the word liminal. Oh, shit. I said it.
Whoops.
As a kid, I'm already deeply concerned.
Oh, yeah, same.
Spoiler, Ross doesn't know it yet, but he's been sucked inside the pinball game.
And as for all of my waxing poetic earlier about appreciating being able to save the game and, the video game vocabulary and the idea of games entering our psyche, I don't ever want to be sucked into a video game. It does not go well. From what I've experienced in fiction, it does not go well. So
it never goes well in
as
fiction.
much as I may have fantasized or had that idea in my head as a kid, and then watching Spy Kids Game Over when I was older.
Lord of mercy.
No thank you. I don't. No thanks.
No.
Don't wanna. Can't make me.
No, I definitely wouldn't if you offered. I definitely would not do it.
Yeah.
In this parallel game world, we encounter the same characters and elements that we've already seen or heard about so far, and TV Tropes calls this trope. And you were there.
from Wizard of Oz.
Exactly.
TV Tropes is so great, man. I love
it.
TV Tropes.
I'm going to reference them a few times.
I always pull up their page for every episode I research for.
It's helpful.
It's great.
But yes, that's what Dorothy says to all the other characters when she wakes up.
And you were there. And you.
And you.
And because it's characters that we saw in reference to the game, like on the art for the game.
Right.
But also characters that we've seen versions of in life.
Exactly.
In Ross's life in that day.
Yeah.
Just as if you were having a dream and you dreamt, you dreamt that the cashier that you saw earlier is a character in your dream, that kind of thing.
Which makes me wonder. It makes me wonder,
Really makes me wonder
it just does.
About you.
Again, how much of this is constructed? How much of this is a dream? We don't know.
It is confusing, one might say.
To say the least, yes. So here are the characters in this episode. And I have the characters, their parallel counterparts, and a few descriptive words about the purpose they serve in this episode.
Okay, because it is confusing. So, I mean, yeah,
it is
I
confusing.
guess it makes sense that you'll break it down for us.
But we have the princess, who is Princess Sophie.
Yes.
The same girl we saw.
Same girl that came in for her music box.
Her words I used to describe her.
Oh, no.
Elusive.
Okay.
Guidance.
Okay.
And distraction.
Yeah. This would be in the code of the game.
Right. The sheriff, his parallel character is the security guard.
Security guard, the mall cop.
The mall cop. Yeah.
That gets on to Ross for trying to take the money out of the fountain.
Right. Hey, what's going on down there? His words are antagonizing, skillful, intelligent.
Okay.
The executioner / wrestler, I call them the same character.
I would too.
The executioner is the mannequin in the store window
with the mace,
who comes to life, which I'm going to get into all of that.
Chainmail.
Strong, dangerous, obstacle.
Okay. I would have said enemy.
Well, enemy, yeah, but I would say the sheriff is like the main enemy.
Also true.
I don't know.
Baddie. He's a baddie.
He's a baddie. He's a big baddie. We have the witch. Her parallel.
Bag lady.
Her words are terrifying, cunning, and mischievous.
She also hisses like a cat, so just whatever that's worth.
Yeah, she does hiss. And she's green. It's very stereotypical.
And you were there?
I'll say evil witch. Not just witch, because
evil witch. We're
fair here.
You're
this is a stereotypical misogynistic.
Think Elphaba.
Right.
Think Wicked Witch of the West. Witch.
Evil witch, wicked witch. And then last we have the zombies, who are, I think their parallel is just everybody at the mall, just people. Because there's a lot of them.
Sure.
They don't really have a parallel though.
Just the mall goers.
Mall goers.
The general population, the NPCs.
Annoying, inconvenient, overwhelming.
That's true of people too. So perfect.
Exactly how I feel in crowds, in public places.
Me too.
So there are 3 levels to the pinball game, and there are 3 levels to the mall. And there are many objectives, not many, not plural, but like tiny, small baby objectives that Ross has to complete on each level before he can advance to the next level.
Tasks that in a video game.
It makes sense. I like that they use the escalators because it comes to life with the lights and the music from the pinball game that we've heard.
In order to level up.
I thought it was well done. It was convincing. Which also, did we discuss the music earlier? I don't think so.
No, we haven't yet.
The music for this pinball.
The music for this episode is pinball music.
It's top notch.
What is it, 8-bit? What do they call it?
It's kind of 8-bit sound, yeah.
Yeah.
It felt me with it.
Felt you? Felt you.
I felt so much dread.
Yeah. Because
hearing that music.
In a video game, in movies and TV too, but in a video game, you know that the bad guy's coming because the music changes.
Oh, yeah.
I was just, video game side note, and I probably should have talked about it earlier because it goes here in this episode. So I was recently playing essentially like a emulator of an old Nancy Drew game, like a computer game, because I had gotten a bunch of stuff dropped off at my house. My parents gave me a bunch of my old CD-ROMs and stuff. I think we talked about it. And in there were Nancy Drew games that I used to play. And there's an emulator on like a modern gaming system on Steam that has one of the earliest Nancy Drew games, Secrets Can Kill. And going through it, it was insane, the nostalgia that just that game. Because, when I would play it, it would be me in my family computer room in the dark, playing by myself. And when I played this game, it's one of the games that's notoriously, it's very easy to kill Nancy.
Oh, yeah.
In some of them, more than others. And this was one of them where if you make the wrong move or like you click the wrong thing at the wrong time before it's in sequence, you can very easily kill Nancy by like blowing up an entire diner. It's very intense.
All right.
And so as I was going through it again, hearing the music, the trigger of the music where it would like spike up in tempo, you know, and it would get a little bit more urgent, I'd be like, oh shit, oh no, I remember this and I don't need to click anything.
Oh, the anxiety.
It just
My
took,
God.
I mean, it took no time at all. It instantly just transported me back to being that age playing that game.
Right.
But music plays a huge part in how the audience member, or in the case of a video game, in how the player feels.
Yep.
And how they interpret what's happening. And this episode really took that and ran with it.
It did.
I thought it was, I thought it was cool.
It was effective. I mean, as soon as he began playing the game at the very beginning, I was like, I remember this from when I was a kid. Oh my God.
And it's really clever too. At the time, obviously, malls were still in. You know, this was still the heyday of the American shopping mall.
Yeah.
But this episode combines the shopping mall with the video game element in a way that I haven't seen before in other media, which is why this was a memorable episode.
Yeah. It made sense. I was impressed with it. But here are the mini tiny baby objectives he has to complete on each level.
Sorry, it took us on our own side quest there.
No, it's fine. We're about to jump all into simulation. It's going to get wild here in a second. But level 1 objectives. Begin the game, secure the key, obtain the tea hour from the vault. Level 2, use the key to free the princess.
Very important.
Obtain the music box, obtain the mace. Level 3 objectives, obtain the water guns. Technically on level 2, but hey, now we're just splitting hairs. Beat the sheriff, crown the princess. Ding, 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 the game is over, you've won.
Or have you?
At least that's the idea, right? Now things are going to get all f***ed up. You ready?
I'm ready.
Oh my God.
Today, my day has been so f***ed up already.
Let's just
bring it on.
Hey, listener, you guys want to get f***ed up? This game that Ross is playing is pure chaos.
But I would describe pinball as chaos.
It is.
Pinball is a very chaotic game. Everything happens quickly. It happens before you have a ton of time to react to it.
I think that's why I don't love pinball.
Same. I would prefer a game like I was talking about. I liked a Nancy Drew game. I like the strategy. I need time to think.
I love a strategy.
As ADHD as I am, I don't want to play pinball. It's weird.
I like to have time to think about what I'm going to do first.
I'm also not a chess player though. So.
Oh, I do love chess. I do like chess.
Give me checkers any day.
I like checkers too. I also like Connect 4.
Same.
And tic-tac-toe.
Yeah.
All right. So I just found it interesting that although Ross is playing the game this whole time and trying to figure out what's going on, he never really puts it together until he arrives on the 3rd level.
It's true.
And there, finally, it clicks. He realizes he's not just playing a game, he's living a game. And it's this concept of a parallel world that a character is forced into, along with Gary's initial warnings of what if the game and all of its consequences are real. This got me going down some extraordinary rabbit holes that I'm excited about.
Please do share with me and the listener.
I'm going to try to get through all this as quickly as possible.
Oh man.
It's going to be...
I feel like those are our famous last words.
Oh no, how much time do we have? The bomb's going to explode. Oh no.
Right?
I wanted to know how this episode could release in 1992. And then just 3 years later in 1995, we get the ultimate 90s example of a game becoming far too real. Jumanji. Which I can't really get into because we're going to cover that one day.
We will.
It's like right there. They're like right there. Why? I wanted to know why the 90s was obsessed with this idea of games becoming real. I wanted to know where these ideas came from, like where this concept of life versus death inside of a simulation/game originated. Because this has been done many, many times. You've already referenced Spy Kids, whatever.
Game over.
This is the basis for many a science fiction premise. And the most popular example I can think of is The Matrix. If you die in The Matrix, you die for real. There's also another super interesting Netflix series that's new that I won't spoil.
Okay.
But that is the main premise too. They're all in a simulation.
Okay.
For a while there, we had Hunger Games,
Mm-hmm.
where the winner of the game, the last man standing, wins the whole thing.
And obviously, if you die in the game, you're dead.
If you lose, like the way that you lose those games is you die. And same thing with Squid Game, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I never did watch Squid Game. I have too much anxiety for that.
It's pretty heavy, but it's really good. I'm giving these examples to prove how common this is. And there's way more.
Oh, absolutely.
You can just look up.
Grown exponentially, this idea.
Yeah. So I'm just doing my research and I'm looking for examples. I watched Tron this week. I'd never seen Tron, the original.
Never?
From 1982. Never.
Oh my God. Okay,
Never
I have
it.
seen Tron.
So I watched it because I was like, there has to be parallels there. And there were.
I'm sure.
There are so many crossovers between Tron, The Matrix, and this episode. And it blew my mind. And they're all pretty unrelated.
They are.
And yet they're not.
So timeline-wise, Tron was first.
82, yes.
Then this episode.
Then this episode
92.
in 92. And then in 99.
The Matrix in 99.
Exactly.
Not only were they not related to each other, but they weren't even close together on the timeline. There's nearly 10 years between each of these examples that you're giving us.
And yet they have so much in common. Not the least of which is the Alice in Wonderland references in both Tron and The Matrix, and how the characters in Tron not only use the word Matrix multiple times, but they refer to their simulated world as the grid. And a grid is just a type of matrix.
Yes.
And let's not pretend like Ross being unable to keep up with Sophie isn't just Alice following the White Rabbit.
That's how that's a lot of video game premise. You know, it's Link and Zelda. It's Mario and Peach.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
You're always chasing that next level, chasing the princess.
It's always present. It's always there. So specifically in Tron, because I just learned this and I think it's super fun, a computer programmer is zapped into the master control system where he's forced to play inside of a racing game against the program that is specifically designed to play that game as the computer. When the master control program tells the racing program about the user, the human, master control says, I want him in the games until he dies playing.
Awful.
Which,
so scary.
That's pretty dark for Disney.
That is pretty dark for Disney.
But the main character of Tron, Flynn, when he's told that he's going to be playing video games as a guest of the master control program, he says, no sweat. I play video games better than anybody. So he has the same bravado that Ross has at the beginning about pinball. He's allegedly very good at arcade games. So that's another parallel. You're sucked into the game, but it's okay because you're good at games.
Right.
I just think it's interesting.
Or you have some sort of like a fallback, like you're talented, you'll be okay. And that's kind of how I felt when I see this in media, where I'm like, but they're good at video games, but it's like, can anybody be that good?
TV tropes, there's a trope for this. They call it badass normals.
Yeah.
You're just a person.
Yeah.
You're part of the game. They're all computers, but you're good at video games. So
badass normals.
You have a chance of winning.
Totally.
So we've just discussed how science fiction has benefited humanity in our We're Back episode from last time. But as a culture, we've gone from what dreams can we apply to life from science fiction to what horrors can we apply to science fiction from life?
Bingo. That's very quotable. Very true.
You guys listening?
Did you like that?
Do you guys like that?
The premise of Black Mirror.
Exactly. No, yeah. That's a perfect example.
The horrors of life.
Applied to
science fiction. Rather than vice versa. That's pretty dark.
And this pretty darkness often results in this exact premise. Yes, of course it's a game, but what if the game is real? So I can't say for certain where this concept came from, where it was born, but I know one of the earliest examples had to have come from a short story called The Most Dangerous Game.
Oh, okay.
By Richard Connell.
I've heard of this.
Heard of this?
Okay. I haven't read it.
This was first published in Collier's on January 19th, 1924. It's a good year. For those who aren't familiar, this is a short story inspired by big game hunting in Africa and South America, which was popular amongst the wealthy American elites in the 1920s. So it features a big game hunter falling from a yacht who swims ashore a Caribbean island where he is then hunted by a Russian aristocrat who explains that he's tired of big game hunting. So he's moved on to hunting man, the most dangerous game of all. We saw some of the same concept with Labyrinth.
Yes.
Come play the game and see if you can beat the labyrinth. if you can't, your baby brother becomes a goblin and you'll turn into a skeleton at the bottom of an oubliette.
You'll turn into a skeleton.
But of course, this is a network television show for children.
Right.
So nobody's trying to kill Ross.
I mean,
necessarily.
by the look of that mace, I think somebody's trying to kill Ross.
Maybe they are trying to kill him, but we can't explicitly say.
We can't say that.
Right.
Sure. But I mean, that's another thing too, is just the casual nature, going back to kind of what we were saying earlier, the casual nature of us referencing lives in a game. And
lives,
you die, and you die in a game, and life and death is very trivialized in that sense.
Right.
And that, I think, is part of what brought us to saying it so casually in fiction. Like, have you died yet? Or like, that kind of thing.
Isn't that crazy?
Weird when you think about it.
We have trivialized it.
Life and death. There's nothing more serious.
Cut to my dad teaching me how to drive.
Exactly.
Going, you realize if you drive off the road, you're going to die,
yeah,
right? Like,
nobody's going to put you back on.
So, yeah, I kept digging and researching all this stuff. And I found really crazy things while researching for the inspiration for the Matrix franchise. The Wachowskis based the premise of the original Matrix film on a philosophical text called Simulacra and Simulation, which was written by a French sociologist and philosopher named Jean Baudrillard and was published in 1981. This book, or at least Jean Baudrillard, as a writer and a thinker, is majorly responsible, if not completely responsible, for the formulation of the modern concept of simulation. So the book, Simulacra and Simulation, was inspired by another book called The Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord, another French writer, which was inspired by the Situationist International movement of the 50s and 60s, which was inspired by libertarian Marxism.
Okay.
Which is inspired by a lot of other stuff too that I'm not going to get into.
It sure is.
All of these philosophical texts and critical theories are critiques of things like capitalism, consumerism, market economy, and mass media, claiming that all social authenticity has died because capitalism is the death of history.
I don't disagree.
And
at all.
The corrupt governments that exist today merely serve the perpetuation of this reality, which Guy Debord referred to as the spectacle.
Wow.
In his The Society of the Spectacle.
Man, I am seriously just getting major Hunger Games vibes.
Yep.
Just hearing these threads be tied together.
She pulled so much of this stuff from this.
Definitely.
It all relates. It all connects. But to further simplify these thought processes, materialism has eroded all potential for authentic human connection. Material wealth has made modern reality a mere construct of what we think reality is or should be. Modern reality, in other words, is a faint echo of what reality used to be before we began to put all this importance on things, objects, items. So they're saying all of this is fake.
Yeah.
And if all of this is fake, then this is a simulated reality.
Damn.
It's a simulation of what we think reality is. Which is where all this stuff comes from. The Matrix comes from this.
You're presenting it to me in a way I just hadn't, I've connected a lot of these dots, but just not all together. So it's all clicking for me.
I'm simplifying it for the sake of just comprehension because I barely understand this stuff, but I found this fascinating, how this all is connecting.
Yeah, that's wild.
So according to this book, Simulacra and Simulation, simulation is the imitation of reality, not reality itself. Simulacrum, this is a quote, simulacrum is never that which conceals the truth. It is the truth that conceals that there is none.
Ew.
Which I had to sit with that for a minute.
Yeah.
And some of you are going, yeah, I've read this 10 times. I know all about this.
Sure.
I've smoked all the weed. I've eaten all the mushrooms. I get this.
Email us.
But if I'm correct, effective simulacra is everything inside the simulation that keeps you from questioning reality. I think that's simplifying it too much. But if that's true, one of the best examples of this is the film The Truman Show, which royally f***ed me up as a kid.
And a lot of other people.
We have to cover this movie.
I think we will.
Because it's family friendly. It's a family film.
What year did it come out in? I can't remember.
90s.
I thought so.
Mid-90s.
Man.
Looking it up?
Yep.
Let me know. Tell me.
I got this machine in front of me that will tell me anything I want to know. 1998.
98. Okay. Truman lives inside of a simulated reality where he's the star of a popular reality TV show based off of an old Twilight Zone episode. The simulation is the world he lives in. The sun, the moon, the atmosphere, the simulacra is all the actors who are supposed to play their parts so well that Truman never once questions whether or not his reality is real.
It's like flora and fauna
Oh, yes.
populating the area.
And it's arguable that many modern sci-fi depictions of simulations, especially since the 80s and 90s, including like Hunger Games and whatever, are directly inspired from all of these critical theories. And I can't say whether or not DJ was directly inspired from them. I don't know if he read these texts, but I know he's familiar with a lot of science fiction, and he's familiar with the Twilight Zone, which has just buttered its bread with concepts like questioning reality.
Yes.
I mean, this whole show is the Twilight Zone for children.
Yeah.
That was his whole point.
Yep.
But I can say that seeing as how many of these texts were directly inspired by a hatred for consumerism and capitalism, I find it super interesting that he saw fit to place this episode in a shopping mall,
Yeah.
which is the structural embodiment of consumer capitalism.
That consumerism. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
We are always impressed with DJ the more we dig into these episodes.
But did he know what he was doing, or
I
was this a
think
happy
so.
accident?
I think so. But it makes so much sense culturally too. Like
He's either
you
lucky
know,
or just the most intelligent person we've ever talked about.
I think he's a genius.
We'll call him a genius.
I like that better anyway.
Mm-hmm. And not only this, but this episode in particular puts a major emphasis on objects, which I will now break down as we segue back into our episode.
Gotcha. Wow. Thank you for that.
Thanks for sticking with me.
What a
on
spiral.
that roller coaster.
What a spiral.
I know, my God. But that was the stuff that got me really pumped.
This laughter that I'm doing is not false. It is simply all I have the energy for. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I know.
I mean it with every fiber of my being. My being just does not have a lot of fiber right now.
But you have a lot of moral fiber, and that's what counts.
Oh, always a lot of moral fiber.
Always.
That's different.
Always. So these objects are quarters, wet quarters,
Wet quarters.
a key, a tiara, a music box, a mace, and water guns. The quarters serve two purposes. Take a quarter, begin the game.
He jumps into the fountain to get this coin to start the whole process, to begin this chain reaction of events.
Yeah.
And jumps in with both feet into this fountain where he could have easily just leaned down and picked up the coin.
You could have just scooped him from the edge, I know.
But when he jumped in, I was like, oh my God. So it just adds a whole layer to this whole thing that he's going through, all these trials, right? Because he's doing them in wet socks and shoes.
I hate wet socks.
Me too. The worst.
I hate wet socks. And he just commits. You're right.
Fully.
His feet.
Both feet. Jumps right in. Both
and his
feet.
jeans are wet now. And he's stuffing wet coins into his jean pockets.
The worst.
Oh, man.
I'm going back to the days of my flare jeans dragging the ground behind my, sneakers
you get all tattered.
Getting all tattered and wet and disgusting.
Oh, yeah. My teenage dirtbag version
Oh, yeah.
was going to youth group on Wednesday nights wearing my Birkenstock sandals.
Oh my, I cannot for the life of me picture you in Birkenstock sandals.
My blue jeans dragging behind my heels, getting all tattered and wet and dirty.
That was me though. Baggy
Wearing
jeans,
like
Birkenstocks.
polos.
And polos. We were wearing the same thing.
But I always wore a backwards hat, so I was always kind of cool.
Right. Because that's cool.
And clean shaven.
Hat, that clinches it for you.
Clean shaven. Anyway.
Sorry, I was just thinking about it enough to write it down that when you consider all of these tribulations that he's enduring, he's doing it with wet shoes and socks.
He is. That was a choice he made too.
And it was a choice that he made.
And I don't even feel bad for him because that was preventable. It wasn't like it was in the middle of the
Very
fountain.
preventable.
Anyway. On the second level, the quarters turn into pinballs, or marbles, that Ross uses to trip up the witch, going full Macaulay Culkin on her ass. Get out of here, witch. I'm the man of the house.
The man of the mall.
The man of the mall.
The belle of the ball.
Wow, what a pretty girl. The key serves one purpose. When Ross finds Sophie bound in chains, he uses the key to unlock the chains and set her free.
He does.
Which I don't fully understand that cycle of, here's the key, you need the key.
Yeah.
You only need the key for later when I'm bound in chains.
I don't get it either.
So the headband, the tiara, headband,
tiara, yes.
crown thing.
You got it. Okay, yeah. Tiara.
It's all the same thing.
She calls it a tiara the whole time, right?
Yeah, but it goes from a headband to a tiara to a crown.
Sure. Yes. Parallels.
It transforms.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You're right.
Mm-hmm. Depending on which level. So it goes from boom, boom, boom.
Headband, tiara, crown.
The main objective is to crown the Princess Sophie on the throne. But at different times, both the witch and the sheriff are almost crowned before some kind of intervention. The music box serves two purposes. Its music zaps the tiara from the clutches of the witch, who is about to crown herself. I just feel like that was just thrown in there. Like, oh no, let's give it a purpose.
To me, it felt almost like we need to connect these two moments, or we need to connect.
Yeah.
I don't know. We want to give the witch another like evil moment or something.
Yeah.
And it felt kind of, haphazardly like this.
I think they
is
wanted
how
the
we'll do
music
that.
to serve a purpose too.
Yeah.
And they were just like, okay, let's bridge
Let's
these.
stir all of three of those elements together in a pot,
Ooh, in a cauldron.
and it'll be the scene. Yeah.
A wicked green cauldron.
A sorcerer might have.
A pinball wizard, you might say. But being in the shape of a throne, the music box has to be taken to the third level where it can turn into an actual human-sized throne. And this is where Sophie needs to sit so she can be crowned to win the game.
But you know, I'm going to just briefly, while we're talking about objects in video games, we all are familiar, because it was one of those things that made inherent sense to me as a kid. I didn't have to be told, because anytime that you collect objects in a video game, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can pick up furniture and put it in your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very common video game thing. Like, nobody questions why or how your character can carry all of these giant objects.
Right. It's like, where is all that stuff? It's in my pocket.
It's in your pocket.
It's in my bag.
It's in my inventory.
My satchel.
It's in my inventory.
It's in my pouch.
Yeah. And so that, to me, because as I was watching as an adult, I was like, that's kind of weird that they make the throne grow. But then I was like, how else do they carry it and put it where they need it? And you know what I mean? Like, how else does he possess it, right? Because he couldn't just hold this giant throne. And I guess that also meant that they saved on their CGI or their animated, sequences budget as well, because they didn't do a sequence where it shrinks and he puts it in his pocket. It's represented by the music box. So I think that was just practical.
Possibly so.
So I don't blame them for that one.
The mace serves one purpose: to shatter the glass case that holds the water guns.
And thankfully, it does not serve the purpose of, lopping Ross's head off.
Thankfully.
Almost, but not quite.
I mean, a couple times, sure. It destroys some sculptures.
It does, yes.
And the water guns serve one purpose: to win the game by super soaking the bad guys, who all vanish like the Professor Screw Eyes.
Hey.
Being devoured by crows.
Ooh. Back up an episode if you didn't catch that reference.
Yeah, go back to We're Back.
We're back.
Go back. And now that we know all of our characters and we know all the items, let's get down to the scares.
These are the things that scared you as a kid.
Well, some of them scared me. Some of them are just, general scares, but we'll see. But generally they left an impression. Like I said, Ross finding himself alone in the mall is the first element that really kind of made me nervous as a kid. Honestly, if I were to walk out of a store now in the mall and it'd be totally dark and empty, I'd be pretty nervous.
I mean, same. Our mall doesn't have the greatest reputation anymore, or
Also
really
that.
it never did.
No.
But I get that feeling just in the daytime at the mall because it's dead. It's empty.
Our mall is pretty liminal
Anyway.
Just being open.
Yep.
And as Ross is walking around, the rides in the mall, like the little quarter slot rides, they all come to life.
Yeah.
And it's a little out of place looking back, watching it again.
It's out of place in the episode, but it was in the zeitgeist. It was in the...
It was.
That's what it feels like to be at a mall. That would be a scary thing to have happen. We all know what those look like.
Yeah.
We rode them as children.
Yeah, I know for sure. I mean, it really sets the mood because it tells you that this place isn't just empty. It has a mind of its own.
It's possessed.
Right.
That's the differentiation.
It's doing things, that you can't anticipate. Super scary.
And everything in here is against you. Like, you've entered a world. You've entered the world of this game. It's same thing in a Mario world where inherently as you begin the level, well, once you've died a couple hundred times, maybe as a kid, as you're figuring it out, you learn that pretty much everything you see is out to get you, except for the mushrooms. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
The mushrooms have always been there for us, right?
Right.
Out of nowhere, one of the payphones ring. This is instant nightmare status for me. The rules and the patterns of this simulated parallel game world function much less on video game logic and much more on nightmare logic.
Oh, true. Good observation.
So there's a school of thought out there that the scariest story ever told is something like, you realize you're the last person alive on Earth, and then there's a knock at the door.
Yeah. Like the 2-sentence horror story.
It's something, exactly. It's something like that.
What is that on the other side?
This same terrifying logic applies to you're the only living person inside this dark, quiet mall.
Mm-hmm.
And then the payphone rings.
Payphone rings. I would be pretty spooked if a payphone rang in the middle of the day.
If you walked by one and it rang?
Yes, I would be
no
spooked
way.
by that.
Do not answer.
No.
That's how you begin the adventure. That's how you
Unless
say yes
you were in
to the
Stars
game.
Hollow, Connecticut, which is a fictional place. Do not answer the payphone if it rings.
Oh God.
I was actually talking to a group of people that are, slightly older than me, some of my coworkers.
Yeah.
And they were talking about prank calling payphones, like finding the number of a payphone at like a movie theater and doing prank calls to the payphone at the theater. That was just slightly must have been before my time because for me, my family probably would have lumped it into a stranger danger, don't answer the phone kind of scenario.
Right.
But
that's wild.
Yeah. I've now heard of that where teenagers would prank call the payphone just to see if they could get somebody to pick it up. But I feel like you could really mess with somebody's head doing that.
No, you could. That's introducing way too much chaos into my own life.
Well, you weren't a prank call person anyway, I'm sure.
No.
Me neither. Because that's just, it's too much.
Mm-mm.
You never know who's going to be on the other end of that line and how it's going to affect them, And I'm too self-conscious.
I know. Are we boring? Are we like...
We're somewhere... Like, we're definitely in the realm of square, I would say.
You think I'm square?
Yeah. But I am too.
Huh.
You look so disappointed. I think
I wouldn't think I'm square.
Okay, modern general society, we don't go out.
I do sometimes.
We don't turn up at the club.
No, I don't go to clubs, no.
Like bars. That's what I mean. We don't really party. We go to bars, but we don't party.
Yeah, but who wants to party?
Exactly. My point
has been proven. If that's the case, then everybody I know are squares. That's not true.
Squares befriend other squares. I'm not saying we are. Okay, we need to play back the tape because what I said was we're somewhere in the realm of square. I don't think we are square.
Are we? No.
But we are certainly more rectangular than we are cool circles.
No, we're in rhombus territory.
I wouldn't even give us that much credit.
Really? Maybe you.
Maybe me.
Maybe you don't know what I've done in my spare time.
That's true. As you sip your gin, I don't know.
I don't tell you everything.
Listener, write in and tell us, how square do you think we are on a scale of 1 to 10? And you can either prove me totally wrong or,
the squareometer.
Right, I guess. Yeah, squareometer. You guys know us well enough by now to give us a rating like that, I think.
No, I used to wear polos, Kalyn. God damn it. I used to wear Birkenstocks.
Those were the cool kids, okay?
Yeah.
In 2007.
In the South. In church culture.
And youth group culture.
Anyway.
That's a whole other thing. Man,
God.
Where were we?
Back to things that matter.
Yeah, not our social lives.
When Ross answers the phone, a voice says,
"Got an umbrella."
And the coins begin raining down from the ceiling.
Which doesn't seem like a horrible thing, I just have to say.
And there's a whole lot of money, but it was enticing. So you can't trust anything.
You can't trust it.
In the game world.
Mm-hmm.
But this phone call gave me real Zebo vibes.
Yeah.
The phone call in the house.
Coming from inside the mall.
Funny enough, it's also reminiscent of The Matrix with the ringing of the hardline phones and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Ross jumps into the pool and stuffs wet coins into his pockets. And it just bothers me so much.
It bothers me a lot. There's not much worse than wet socks.
As soon as he takes a coin, the game begins. And instantly, we meet the next most frightening element, the zombies.
Mm-hmm.
These are basically just men in suits who are identical in almost every way.
It's that NPC vibe. There's a crowd of these homogenous, non-player characters. I mean, they're not a player. They're not really a bad guy necessarily.
No, they're bad.
They're just kind of in the way.
They serve the other bad people.
Yeah, they're henchmen.
They're henchmen. They're pawns. But they wear black suits, black ties, dark sunglasses, and these black bowler hats. And they have like silver skin and silver hair.
Mm-hmm.
Again, another parallel to The Matrix. In The Matrix, there are similar types of characters who are called agents.
Yes.
They wear black suits, dark sunglasses. They have these radio earpieces. And they're all these nondescript men. And they're literally meant to resemble government agents or men in black.
Men in black, yeah.
But the zombies in this episode, I think they're meant to represent corporate zombies. Like the suits of corporate America who go to work every day, feeding the beast, playing the game.
Hey, you don't got to tell me.
Mm-hmm. You know all about it.
I think we may have even discussed it on the show before, but you've seen The Adjustment Bureau?
Yeah.
Same thing. There are these
Incredible
government
movie.
agents. I love that movie. Oh my God, Emily Blunt. I love that movie. But same kind of thing. There are these government agents that are keeping you on the right grid and in the right, flow, so to speak. Same kind of concept.
It is very similar.
Because in the world of the Adjustment Bureau, it is not depicted as a simulation. It's depicted as these, like, the whole life is life, but it is being controlled,
right.
In some way, or manipulated in some way. Fate. They're depicted more as like agents of fate.
Right. No, for sure.
Interesting though. But yeah, I thought of that movie immediately. I was like, oh yeah, wow, okay.
Mm-hmm. It's always men in suits.
It's been around a long time.
But we learn here that the zombies are afraid of water.
Mm-hmm.
They can't cross this puddle.
And we've all had that moment in a video game where we learn the weakness of the bad guy.
Yeah.
Or, we jump on the head of the Koopa, and like we've all had that moment of like, oh, this is how you kill them. This is how you this is how you defeat them. And that was depicted very straightforward, like
very straightforward.
Kids of the time, we knew how that worked.
Mm-hmm. And I think he chose water because water's bad for electronics.
Nice.
That's what I think.
Nice. I'm with you.
That's what I think.
I'm with you.
Next, we have the gross lockers.
Ew.
I have to talk about these
They
lockers.
are gross. Yeah.
They're not scary. They're just gross.
Gross.
Princess Sophie tells Ross to get the tiara from the vault. So he goes looking through the lockers until he finds the headband.
Mm-hmm.
But before he finds it, we get some classic 90s Nickelodeon gross out humor.
Yes.
And he opens a locker that splatters him with this green slime that looks like vomit.
It does.
Straight up pea soup.
Yeah, it did to me. And I don't do vomit. I'm not.
So nasty.
I don't do well with it. I would have much preferred it if it were actually like neon green Nickelodeon slime.
Yeah, much more like slime.
I would have appreciated that.
I wish they'd done more of that stuff.
Because I mean,
like
that also would
shows.
feel, and that would also feel more video game.
It would.
Right? Because everything in a video game is this like larger
Ultra
than life.
color, like, yeah.
Maybe Nickelodeon wouldn't give DJ the recipe. Who knows?
And then the next locker hits him with this blast of foul yellow air.
Ugh.
They just had to do it to him, didn't
It
they?
is gross.
And to us.
Mm-hmm. The gag, right? Like the false corridor, in a game.
It has this like Legends of the Hidden Temple
Yes.
style. Oh no, wrong door.
Labyrinth,
Labyrinth too,
Same
yeah.
kind of thing. It's a very common trope in a game environment.
Yeah.
But I did like the idea that the vault is just the lockers at the mall and the tiara is just the headband that the pretty 90s girl left in the lockers.
And she was wearing that same headband before in the shop.
When she came into the shop.
Was that just called a headband or was that a specific type of headband? I was going to ask you.
I mean, I would just call it a headband. I'm sure it does have a name.
I didn't look it up. I was like, Kalyn will know. I'll ask her.
Shockingly, Kalyn doesn't know about fashion of the 90s or now.
Oh, because you are a tomboy.
Yeah, I didn't really wear a lot of the hair accessories at the time.
That's too bad.
And I grew up and got thyroid disease. Lost all my hair.
Oh, that's probably direct connection.
Right?
It's got to be related.
You know me. I blame myself for everything.
It has to be related. There's no way.
These movies and these games that has seeped into my moral code. And the moral fibers, as we said.
Moral fiber. You have a surplus. So next is the most nightmarish stuff to me. And it's all to do with the witch.
Yeah. She's spooky.
Tiara in hand, Ross ascends the escalator to the second level, where we get the first of our terrifying witch scares. I remember not being able to watch this, like the moments with the witch, because it scared me so much.
Wow.
Like full on eyes closed, hands covering the ears. Like, I don't want to know about it.
I was sort of desensitized to that type of witch because of The Wizard of Oz.
Really?
I had watched her melting so many times.
I saw it too.
And she scared me in that movie, but I do think that having seen that so many times and seen her defeated gave me confidence when it came to a wicked witch.
I see.
Because by this age, watching this, I would have seen it many times.
There might be a reason this lived with me as a kid. I don't know.
Yeah?
But I'll
like
get to
that.
that.
You know? Okay.
Potentially.
Okay.
This is just me looking back. I don't remember. I was very young.
Sure.
But the witch and also the bag lady are both played by Natalie Gautier. This is her only Are You Afraid of the Dark credit. But she did a slew of other films within the horror and science fiction genres, which I really respect and appreciate.
I felt like they could have used her again, you know?
They could have used her a lot.
I
She
think
was
so.
good.
She was that, she did that quintessential scary witch character.
I would agree.
Pretty well.
I would agree.
Minus the hissing.
Less hissing.
If I was the director, anyway.
But not only has she been a flying trapeze and static trapeze artist, she's also run a trapeze school, an inspirational empowerment program for kids.
Oh my God.
What a cool person.
Can I go?
I don't know if she still does.
Yeah, I want to learn trapeze and gain confidence in
Yeah, you
myself
pass.
and others.
People think you're 15 all the time.
Constantly.
So, we meet the witch when Sophie calls out to Ross to follow her, and she takes off running. And she runs down this long hallway, and Ross chases her around the corner, where he's met by the witch
Dun, dun, dun.
and her incredible cackle. I wonder if that's her or somebody else.
I
don't know.
wonder too.
The cackle. It's really
Did
good.
they dub the cackle?
The reason why I think this may have lived with me for too long is because when I was a kid, I didn't realize that that was actually Sophie. I put it together that that was the witch pretending to be Sophie, leading Ross from the general area of the mall
Oh.
down this isolated dark hallway to a secluded place where she could then reveal herself as the witch.
Okay.
And I think that I closed my eyes and covered my ears too quickly every time. And I never fully grasped that it was actually Sophie.
That's wow.
And so
yeah, I
this-
didn't even think that, but that, I mean, that would be interesting too. I wouldn't put it past them to do that.
I think that makes more sense. And that's way scarier because that's what I thought forever.
Wow.
And I always thought that Sophie truly was tied up in chains. So I just think I could have saved myself a lot of nightmares if I had just paid attention,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
But this has gone down in my personal history as one of the scariest moments of Are You Afraid of the Dark, of the whole series.
Because you believed that something that you trusted transformed into the bad guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
hmm
Wow. I can see how that would mess you up.
This led to many, many nightmares on my for me
I can.
throughout the years of my life. I still have nightmares like that.
Yeah. Oh, I had one just the other night. I was telling you.
Yeah.
Where all was not as it seemed. And things transformed before my eyes that weren't. It wasn't real.
Yeah. I think that has made up a lot of my own like personal anxiety and fear.
Trust issues.
I do have trust issues.
That's where they started. We just uncovered the root.
Squares don't have trust issues. So.
Oh, yes, they do. They became square somehow, didn't they?
Oh, man. All right. There are other moments where we see the witch skulking around looking like Bowser and shit.
She does.
And it's pretty unnerving to see her appearing out of nowhere in this dark, empty mall. But the other most terrifying moment to me is this throne ride of doom. So when he gets to the third level, like we said, the music box turns into this large and in charge throne.
It does.
Where Ross sits down and it begins to move through the mall like a ride. And he can't control it and
He's
he can't
at the
stop
mercy
it.
of the throne.
And he can't get off of it.
Nope.
And this isn't scary.
No.
I know that. But I had this nightmare as a kid
Oh my God.
about
This just really got in there.
it did. About being on something that's moving against my will. And I can't stop it. I can't get off.
You can't get off the ride. I mean,
I can't get off the ride.
That's fair.
And I am moving towards something that is terrifying. And I'm heading straight for it. And no matter what I do, I can't stop it from happening.
Yeah.
And that's the witch in front of the wall of cobwebs
Yeah.
as Ross crashes into her.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the dream where I've been on the throne and I crash into the witch.
Holy
But it's
cow.
not like a show where she just vanishes. She's still there.
Ew.
And I have to ride as she's like scratching me up and like
Ew.
killing me.
Oh my God.
And that's part of why I'm so messed up.
I'm so glad that you're the one that covered this episode because I did not have the same connection. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. A video game.
I don't
I
know
like
why.
games like that.
I don't know why this bothered me so
It
much.
got to you. Because the lack of control, the trust issues and the lack of control.
I think you're right.
Yeah. That's my psychoanalysis
Hey,
in
ladies,
the moment.
you guys want to get a drink sometime?
Want to go visit the mall?
I'm a nice guy.
I'll give you a quarter.
I'm a real good guy. The witch just got me. I don't know.
Wow.
Next up, we have the mannequin that comes to life. So the executioner and also the wrestler is played by Norman James.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also credited as the Nutcracker.
In this episode.
I don't recall that.
I don't either. But I only watched it twice. So
Yeah.
next time, that's my assignment. I'll look for the Nutcracker.
The scariest part about the executioner is that we first saw him as a mannequin in the front window of Mr. Olson's store holding the mace. And then once Ross goes into the store in the game world, to free Sophie from her chains,
Mm-hmm.
the mannequin comes to life and attacks them
It does.
with the mace.
Mhm.
So looking back again, this isn't inherently scary. I mean, a mannequin coming to life would be terrifying.
It would be terrifying.
But-
and also, again, the mace, though. It's a weapon.
But as a kid, anything inanimate coming to life scared the ever-loving shit out of me.
Meanwhile, I was trying to make it happen. I watched The Indian in the Cupboard one time.
Oh, but see, I love that too.
And it was over.
I always wanted my toys to come to life until I went to sleep.
And then that scared
And
you.
then I thought they would come to life while I was unconscious.
Mhm.
I didn't
I
like
believed
that.
that too, but I trusted in my toys. I was like, you guys
Oh, I
got me,
didn't.
right? We're good?
I put my monkey Jake in prison. And that's not a euphemism.
Just in case.
Just in case.
I may have mentioned it on the show before, but Ashton, my best friend Ashton,
Yeah.
one of my childhood best friends, we would take these like figurines that we had. One of mine was a Pocahontas, like the Disney Pocahontas.
Yeah.
They were plastic and they were about the size of the Indian in the Cupboard figurines. And we would
Yep.
hook them up to the lamps in my bedroom with pipe cleaners.
What?
Because we thought that would bring them to life somehow in the night.
The power of the lamp?
Yeah.
Bulb?
Yeah. We believed that was going to do it. And it was pretty funny because my mom, I think, caught wind of like what we were trying to do, or she heard us saying, like talking about bringing the toys to life or something, or bringing the dolls to life.
Right.
So we went outside, we came back in, and my mom had moved our American Girl dolls that had nothing to do with this plot that we had concocted. And so
Right.
we were like, wait a second.
Your mom pulling an elf on the shelf.
She did. She sure did.
Wow.
We weren't even, and then of course I knew that she had done something, but it was too funny. I'm like, you didn't notice the dolls hanging from the lamps
That's so
by
funny.
pipe cleaners? Like,
Oh, so she just got the wrong doll.
yeah, she got the wrong doll.
That's funny.
She moved our
Wow.
American Girl dolls instead.
You
and
should have
we're-
tried to plug them into a potato.
I mean, I'm sure we did. I'm not even joking you. We had all kinds
Oh,
of scientific experiments. I was like Mary Shelley
Hey,
up in there. I was gonna animate some inanimate stuff.
you were cooler than me. I was just playing with Hot Wheels and stuff. Picking my nose. I don't know.
Sorry, I don't even know if that story belongs, other than just when inanimate things come.
No,
to
yeah,
life.
that belongs completely. I wanted it to happen and then I didn't. It was
Mhm.
scary. Also, I watched Child's Play as a very young
See,
child, and it ruined me.
And I didn't. I avoided that one, so I probably would have had a completely
I
different
was
outlook on
way
that.
too young.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Yikes.
And not only does this mannequin executioner type thing with the mace come to life and try to attack you, but it chases you down as you run away.
I definitely don't want anything to do with it.
So it is scary. But then we never see the executioner again. The actor becomes the wrestler,
Mhm.
which is not scary.
Not scary, but very 90s.
But his thighs were huge.
They were. I don't want to think about them anymore.
And last, and definitely least in my opinion, is the one-eyed man.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the sheriff wearing his eye patch.
Mhm.
So we've seen him a couple times now, just putting his hands all over the princess.
He did. Ugh.
Trying to drag her away.
Mhm.
And he wrote this episode and then he cast himself. as
Yeah, I don't like that.
I'm just putting that out
As
there.
soon as you said that, I was like, hang on, wait a second.
Can't wait to grab me a princess.
Yikes.
Ultimately, the sheriff is the main villain because he's the one who is almost crowned on the throne before engaging in a duel with Ross at the end.
Mhm.
I think the only thing that's really scary about him to kids, other than his domineering authority, is the eye patch. Kids tend to be afraid of people who are missing body parts.
Yeah.
And psychologically, this is probably because it's a lot of like, well, what if that happened to me?
Right.
Or this is just something that's I'm not familiar with, or it's just different.
It's different, yeah. And it's the we've talked about that very early on the show, the psychology of fear.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with preventing, negative outcomes for yourself.
Right. Right.
So,
We have discussed also how missing a hand or a limb oftentimes is meant to represent a loss of humanity.
mhm. In fiction, yes.
Like you've lost some part of yourself
Yep.
during your evil endeavors.
Mhm.
And we didn't mention it, I don't think, when we discussed Professor Screw Eyes.
No, we didn't.
We're back.
We sure didn't.
He was a villain, and somewhere along the way, he lost a part of himself,
Mhm.
just like our sheriff, his eye.
And we are not ragging on amputees, by the way.
No, definitely, we don't believe this stuff.
No,
This is
no.
just
It's-
part of the research. This is an analysis.
It's meant to be like, it's representative in some fiction.
It is an obvious, literal, physical representation of something much more abstract and hard to explain to children.
Mhm.
So they go with this symbolic gesture instead.
He lost his way.
Yes.
He lost his sight. He lost his vision.
And sadly, yes, it became this trope of missing a part of your body that it was applied to villains.
The missing hand to represent humanity, I feel like it goes back much further into history.
That makes sense.
Because of punishments that were doled out to,
Right.
thieves, etc. It was a much more direct cause and effect sort of fear.
Yeah.
You would want to watch out for those people because they had endured some punishment from the law for doing something villainous, bad, etc.
It was a symbol.
Not the
right.
case today in our society, thankfully.
That's my question is like, are kids naturally afraid of people who look a little bit different than they do? Or did we teach children to be afraid of people who are missing parts of their body because we've always applied that to villains?
I don't know.
Now that we've become aware of this trope, I can't unsee it and I'm fascinated by it and I want to keep tracking it.
It's there. It's everywhere, really.
But again, like you were saying, I just want to clarify again, we don't believe having any sort of difference or
Absolutely
anything
not. Absolutely
makes anyone
not.
a bad person or less than human in any way.
These are all just like fictional tropes that we've noticed in fiction and that are pointed out in like literature and analysis of literature.
But since we're talking about the duel between the sheriff and Ross, we might as well pick back up here with our narration and bring this episode to its final scare.
Let us.
And therefore, its conclusion. Let's wrap this shit up.
Let's do it.
Ross has just used the super soaker to super soak the zombies and the wrestler with his big thighs, leaving only the sheriff and Princess Sophie. So Ross tells her the game is over. But the sheriff grabs the mace and knocks the super soaker out of Ross's hands, giving us some classic hero-villain discourse. And some of the only dialogue in this episode that isn't pure exposition. The sheriff explains that it isn't over because he's still there.
Shouldn't play the game, boy, unless you know the rules.
I was ready to quote that.
They had to say Game Boy.
Game Boy.
They had to. And then Ross says, which I like this. It's important. It's good for kids to learn. But this isn't a game. It's real. And when it's real, you can make up your own rules.
You're not confined to
Yes.
the code.
Right.
You're not confined to these limited options that the game master engineer has set forth for you.
It's all just a simulation, kid.
See, that's the opposite point.
Reality's a construct. Get out. Get out.
But if it's real, we can make up our own rules. That's the difference between a simulation and reality.
It helps if you have a second water gun in your back pocket.
Right.
Then
For
you can
just
whip
such
out
occasions.
and squirt the sheriff.
Because he's the kind of kid that probably carried a water gun around with him all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I buy it.
So he squirts the sheriff with the water gun, winning the game. And then he crowns Princess Sophie on the throne. It's over. Except it's not over. Ross essentially respawns back at the beginning.
He does.
On the first floor. We hear Mr. Olsen laughing a good old-fashioned villain's laugh.
I mean, like an intense villain's laugh.
Yeah, really intense.
And it lasts a long time.
That's what she said. And when Ross looks up at the glass ceiling, he sees the face of Mr. Olsen, the real pinball wizard.
You told me I could trust you, Ross. But you had to play the game, didn't you? Hope you enjoy your free games. You'll be playing them forever.
Forever. To add insult to injury, Mr. Olsen starts a new game, sending a giant pinball up to the escalator like it's Indiana Jones.
Yes.
When Ross saw that ball, he knew that he would never get out. The end.
And it's over. And this is almost the exact same ending
Yes.
of Gary's previous story, the Super Specs.
Sure is.
When they're inside the crystal ball, trapped.
He must feel trapped in some way.
He's
because
got to.
his stories always end with that you're never going to get out. You're never going to
So far,
wake up.
I don't know
So
about
far.
the future
So far.
episodes.
Season
but you're
1.
right. He must feel some level of entrapment.
Yeah, I think so.
Entrapment?
I'm also bothered by Mr. Olsen just deciding he's the moral authority and punishing these kids who can't resist a good game of pinball by kidnapping them. It's very Jareth. It's very Goblin King. Like, it's gonna take you now. I get to decide.
That's one of my big questions. He's clearly magic on some level.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, Ross wouldn't have been trapped if he had done what he said, if he was
If he
trustworthy.
didn't play it.
If he watched the store,
Yep.
he wouldn't be here. But this is an unjust
system.
Yeah, like...
Of course, as a kid, I would have taken it, and my parents probably would have been glad. I would have taken it as, yeah, if you lie or you don't do what you're told to do or you don't obey the rules...
Yeah, your parents would have
You're
loved
going
this.
to get stuck in the pinball machine forever.
Your parents would have loved this.
Mm-hmm.
This is what TV Tropes calls disproportionate retribution. It's totally unfair.
Because
consequence.
They treat it like a moral failing
Yeah.
that he's played this game after being told not to. And while it's not something I would do or ever have the instinct to do, it doesn't mean he deserves to be punished for all eternity, right?
No.
Let the punishment fit the crime.
Right.
Make him mop the floors or something, Olsen.
Yeah, but because we do see Olsen when he walks by earlier, we see him kind of like laugh and smirk because he hears Ross playing the game.
And he's like, good. It's as if it's all according to his plan. He wanted this to happen.
All going to plan.
Which makes him sadistic, and that's pretty dark.
He's a villain. That's pretty dark. Yeah. So now that the story's over, Gary cheekily offers the Game Boy back to
Still
David.
want to give it a go?
Oh, no. I think I've outgrown this.
And they toss it around
It's all yours,
until
Frank.
it ends back up with Gary.
How about you got it, Gary?
Hot potato. Nobody wants it.
Whoever's got the game, just make sure the game doesn't get you.
Which is the same point we made before. Don't let it beat you.
Night, guys.
Just beat the game.
The point that Gary's driving home is something that TV Tropes calls Space Whale Aesop.
Do elaborate.
We've discussed Aesop's fables before. Mm-hmm. We use Aesop often because there's often a moral to these
Dark stories.
kids' shows and movies and such. This is the name they give to completely overdramatic consequences for simple transgressions. The space whale, allegedly, they say, comes from Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Okay.
The plot of which they summarize as, don't let the whales go extinct, or else an alien probe will eradicate the planet.
Gotcha.
How they describe this episode is, don't get too absorbed in video games, or you might end up trapped inside of one.
Don't be too tempted by the video games. Don't, the alluring music and lights. Don't fall victim to that because you'll never get out.
That's right.
The addiction metaphor.
And it's kind of similar too with Sophie being a distraction. Maybe how Ross can actually win the game is to crown himself. But I don't think he ever will because he will always want to try to help Sophie.
Save the princess.
Save the princess, win the game. She's super hot. He's young. He's enthralled by her.
But also, it'd be really difficult to put yourself in that position and say, like, I would have a hard time with that. Save this other person or save myself.
I just think he's too wrapped up in the logic of video games. I don't know.
And then maybe the metaphor there would be like taking yourself out of it, remembering that they're all just a game.
Right.
And you're not.
So was Sophie in the store? Was she an actual customer? Because he began playing the game and then she showed up. Do we think she was a real person? Or was she conjured by the magic of the pinball game?
It's a good point, because she doesn't appear until after he starts playing. So I would say I would lean more toward the fact that she's part of the illusion. She's part of the code.
I kind of think so, because Mr. Olsen knew this kid was going to show up. He had this plan ready. Either way, Sophie is not someone trapped in the game with Ross.
Right.
She's not like,
I don't think so.
She wasn't there with him playing the game.
She hasn't been recruited to do this.
He doesn't have to save her to get her out of the game. He has to save himself.
She's just not real.
Yeah, she is part of the game. She is a distraction. I just think that he's never going to realize that he can save himself.
Man, I definitely didn't think about that. That's pretty wild.
So where do we think Steven went off to? Is he in the other pinball game?
Mr. Olsen has him in a different game.
Is he in the radio?
Maybe. I think that Mr. Olsen just makes a habit of he's made himself the executor of morality in children, and he's doling out these
Isn't that wild?
Punishments.
What's his background? What's his story?
I don't know.
See, that's
he was a carnival barker once upon a time in another realm.
What if he's the same character? Yeah, this is his
This is his day job. And at night he goes to the basement.
Oh wow.
I don't know.
Maybe this is in the basement.
Yeah, maybe it's all within the basement.
Story inception. Scarometer.
Oh God.
Speaking of playing the game,
I am never ready.
What would you rate this episode?
It's tough for me. It's very difficult because as an episode, none of the visuals really scared me.
Right.
Which happens often. So I have to go based on more of the concept.
Yep.
And the concept of being trapped in a game does scare me. The concept of being trapped anywhere scares me, or especially anything that's going to be eternal, as we've discussed throughout this lovely and incredible season binge that we've been on. So I think to balance that out for me, I'm going to have to go in the middle and say like 4.5 to 5.
Really? Okay.
What about you?
Just purely because of the nightmares I had. I don't even really love this episode, but the impression it left on me as a kid, I have to give it an 8.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't really heard you talk like this about any of the other episodes.
I think
so
that's
far.
the highest I've given so
I think
far.
so too.
And again, I can still think of more episodes that...
You consider to be scarier.
Yeah.
But this one still...
Visually too.
Stuck with you.
But there's something about this one. I didn't really remember those nightmares until I watched it again.
Right.
And I started to think about it and I was like, oh my God, all that came from this episode.
That's pretty crazy.
So
that's why we're here.
I have to give it a super high score. I have to.
I don't blame you.
It's an 8.
It's an 8 for you. Bang the gavel.
Bang the
I
mace.
can't believe that we've done 13 Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes.
13. That's season 1.
We have just dug into so much that I had no idea about. I feel like I've learned so much in this first season binge. Like,
Oh my God.
psychology-wise,
Oh yeah.
culturally.
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we've got more where that came from. We plan to continue on, listener. If you're sad, if you have come to the end of the season binge and you're sad that there isn't any more Are You Afraid of the Dark content from us, don't worry. We will be covering the subsequent seasons of Are You Afraid of the Dark. We will come back for them.
Absolutely.
We just are taking a break to start a new season binge.
Yeah.
You want to share
Do you
what
want
it
to
is?
say what it is?
I don't remember if we have or not. I feel like we maybe have.
No, I don't think we have.
I guess we can officially tell you, listener.
We've told people like here and there.
Well, listener, for the first official time, our second season binge will be Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully you didn't already know that.
We're at least going to try. We don't know how it's going to go.
We don't.
It's a very different structure.
It's structured very differently than Are You Afraid of the Dark, so we still have to do some work in terms of figuring out who's going to cover what and when, because the episodes are a lot shorter, but there's 2 per.
They're a lot shorter.
2
segments per episode.
We're working on it for you right now. And whenever we kick that off, just like we covered a lot of Nickelodeon history with Are You Afraid of the Dark, we plan to go into some Cartoon Network history.
Right, yeah. We'll open that whole
well.
thing with Cartoon Network.
And I feel like that's going to serve us going forward, having done a show from each network as we continue, because we know the role that these networks played in our childhood as millennials.
For sure. For sure. I can't wait.
I'm pumped.
Because some people are like, I'm a Nickelodeon kid. And some people are like, I'm a Cartoon Network kid.
Yeah, I would say I was a Nickelodeon kid who watched
I was both.
Cartoon Network shows occasionally.
That's probably true for me too. But I definitely loved both.
Yeah.
I wasn't really partial to either one.
I think I was, just because
I'm a Nickelodeon adult who used to watch Cartoon Network shows.
I guess that checks out.
For sure.
I can see that.
But yeah, that's all I've got.
Wow. Well, thank you
Thank you.
for finishing off our season binge in style.
For 13 episodes of that, almost a whole full year.
Yeah, it really, we weren't sure how it would all shake out when we started out, listener, but it's been just a little over a year. Has it? I don't remember when our first
October 2nd.
Are You Afraid of the Dark was. Okay, yeah. So
Oh, well, no, Are You Afraid of the Dark was November.
so we don't sound dumb.
November of last year.
So yeah, it would have been.
It was like episode 5 or 6.
It was 6.
Yeah.
November 6, 2021 was our first
Boom.
season binge episode.
Damn.
So yeah, it took us just over a year to get 13 episodes into Are You Afraid of the Dark. That's wild.
Would do again.
We hope that you've enjoyed it. Please write in. Let us know how you feel. Let us know which was your favorite. Like, which is your favorite Are You Afraid of the Dark, or which was your favorite episode that we covered? Something that you learned that you didn't already know.
That'd be great.
We like to talk with you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Would love that.
And we'll have some Christmas content coming your way before too long, which I can't believe it's already December.
Dude, I know.
Personally.
God.
And then before you know it, it'll be 2023.
Lord, don't even remind me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to live back in 2015.
Same.
Forever and ever.
Any final thoughts?
I'm out of thoughts.
No more thought thinking.
My brain is dead. I'm going to go make some red beans and rice.
Heck yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, listener, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for listening.
We appreciate you.
Sure do.
Follow our socials, do the emailing, do the stuff.
Do the stuff.
Send us to a friend if you enjoyed your time here.
Give us 5 stars.
If you think we're 5-star worthy,
All 5.
please.
4 is okay.
4 would be fine. I
But
can
5.
do that, but I'm kind of a perfectionist, so 5 stars would be just amazing.
Yeah.
Can you tell we're bad at this? We bring it up all the time, but this is not how we like to operate. So we're doing the podcast stuff that they say to do.
You guys keep it super cool. Go play some video games.
Yeah, go play some games.
But don't get too absorbed, or you might get absorbed.
At least don't trust any Mr. Olsons that you meet.
Don't trust any old guys.
Not to discriminate against old guys. Oh my God.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. See you next time. Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kalyn Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.